Chapter 3. Whispers of the Past. On Ibrahiim's 15th birthday, the Sydney autumn painted Lakemba in shades of gold and crimson. The Semeh family had planned a proper Aussie celebration. A backyard barbie with both traditional Palestinian dishes and snags on the grill. 3 years in Australia had changed them all in subtle ways, their identities evolving like the seasons. The morning started with the typical bustle of party preparations. Layla worked in the kitchen, her hands moving with practiced efficiency as she prepared traditional Palestinian makluba, while Rashid arranged chairs in the backyard. Chatting with Joseph said about the cricket scores from last night's match. But it was Ibrahiim's grandmother, Fatima, who would transform this ordinary celebration into a pivotal moment. She had arrived from Gaza just 2 weeks earlier. Her first visit to Australia marked by both wonder and a deep, unspoken tension that seemed to follow her like a shadow. Fatima sat in the corner of the living room, her weathered hands clutching a small wooden box, a family heirloom she had carried across continents. Her eyes, dark and deep with untold stories, followed Ibrahiim's movements with an intensity that made him slightly uncomfortable. "Habibi," she called softly, her voice carrying the weight of decades. "Come sit with your Tedder for a moment." Ibrahiim glanced at the gathering crowd in the backyard. Michael and his family had just arrived, along with other mates from school. But something in his grandmother's voice compelled him to stay. 15 years, she murmured, more to herself than to him. The same age your father was when he learned the truth. The afternoon light filtered through the windows, casting long shadows across the carpet. Outside, the sounds of laughter and conversation created a stark contrast to the heavy silence that had settled in the living room. "There's something you need to know," Fatima began, her hands trembling as she opened the wooden box. Inside lay a collection of old photographs, yellowed documents, and a small Star of David pendant that caught the light with an unexpected brilliance. "Your grandfather, my Ahmed, he wasn't born Ahmed Semeh." Her voice quivered. "He was born Abraham Steinberg in Warsaw, 1935. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Ibrahiim stared at his grandmother, trying to process her words. The sounds from the party faded into a distant hum. "We were Jewish," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your grandfather's family fled Poland during the Holocaust. They found refuge in Palestine, where they lived alongside Arab families who protected them." She pulled out a photograph. A young man with familiar eyes standing beside a woman in front of a small house in Palestine. "Your grandfather's parents chose to convert to Islam, to blend in, to survive. They changed their name, their religion, their entire identity. It was a time when survival meant adaptation." Ibrahiim's hands shook as he took the photograph. The man in the image had his father's eyes, his own nose. Pieces of a puzzle he never knew existed began falling into place. "But why?" he started, his voice cracking. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Fatima's eyes filled with tears. "Fear. Habibi. Fear and the weight of history. Your grandfather believed that some truths were too heavy for children to bear. But you're 15 now, the age of understanding." Through the window, Ibrahiim could see Michael playing cricket with some younger kids, his curly hair bouncing as he demonstrated a proper bowling technique. His best mate, who had shared everything with him for the past 3 years, who had helped him understand what it meant to be Australian. "Does Michael's family know?" he asked, suddenly aware of the complexity of his situation. "No one knows," Fatima replied. "Your father has carried this secret since he was your age. In Gaza, such knowledge could have been dangerous. Even here." She trailed off, leaving the implications hanging in the air. The wooden box still held more documents, birth certificates, old letters in Polish and Hebrew, fragments of a history that had been carefully hidden for generations. "But why tell me now?" Fatima reached out and touched his cheek, her hand warm and familiar. "Because understanding who we are, all of who we are, is the only way to truly belong. Your grandfather used to say that identity is like the sea, deep, complex, and ever-changing. A loud burst of laughter from the backyard made them both jump. The party was in full swing, unaware of the seismic shift occurring inside the house. "What am I supposed to do with this information?" Ibrahiim asked, his voice small against the weight of history. "That, my dear boy, is your journey to discover. But remember, we are all made of many stories. Some are written in our blood, others in our choices. The truth doesn't change who you are. It only adds to your story." As the sun began to set over Sydney, casting long shadows across the suburban landscape, Ibrahiim sat with his grandmother, looking through the contents of the wooden box. Each photograph, each document, each carefully preserved memory added another layer to his understanding of himself. Outside, his Australian life continued. The smell of sausages on the barbie, the sound of cricket balls hitting bats, the mix of Arabic and English conversation. But inside, a profound transformation had begun. The boy who had woken up that morning as Ibrahiim Samir, son of Palestinian migrants, now sat as the inheritor of a far more complex legacy.